A pleasant evening and welcome to the May 15th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe and I will serve as your host this evening. This evening we're speaking about the creative economy, and for those of you who would have been paying attention to the news on GBN, you know last week it was all unleashed, the creative economy in Grenada, that is. So thank you very much for joining us, those of you listening on GBN radio, those of you who are viewing via GBN television, as well as our various social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, etc. Thank you so very much for joining us. Before we move into this program, however, let me just say a thank you for those of you who would have expressed condolences and well wishes and support to the family of GBN's country manager, Odette Campbell, and for the entire GBN family, really. Your thoughts, your words, your prayers have been noticed, are appreciated. People grieve in different ways for different lengths of time. So the support that you have given thus far, and we pray and ask for your continued support for her family as they go through these trying times. Thank you so very much for all of the extensions that you have made thus far. And this evening we're speaking, as I said, about the creative economy, and with us this evening I will go deliberately ladies first, Neela Etienne, and also Eugene Gittens. But just you can re-emphasize your name, of course, Neela, but your portfolio as we think of and all within your CV that relates to the creative economy.
Well, thank you, Colin. I might need the whole evening to talk about my CV. It's getting longer and longer but as the days go by. But thank you so much for having me on Beyond the Headlines. It's my first time on Beyond the Headlines, and I'm extremely happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation as we talk about the creative economy this evening. Like you said, my name is Neela Etienne. I am an educator first and foremost. I am a theater practitioner. I'm a playwright, actress, voiceover talent, and I think I might have to add hostess to that list. Last week I was asked to host the Creative and Cultural conference, and I must say that I'm extremely happy for that. I was extremely, and I think I'm still basking in all that happened last week. So I'm extremely happy for that opportunity. So thank you again for having me on this evening's program.
Excellent. Eugene?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to apologize to the viewers and listeners about my maybe voice. I'm actually a little bit under the weather. That conference had about maybe 250 or more people every day. And I think I got a bug. Somehow I got some little bug or something. Just attending all those days with all those people. But anyway, I will try my best to go through this interview, with this chat. Basically, I am a sociologist and musician. I also headed up the UNESCO office here in Grenada. And of course, UNESCO has to do with a lot culture and education and science and all those things. And I also was the co-chair along with Orlando Romain of the conference that just took place.
Okay, and just open up, please, Eugene, and so I'll stay with you. What is this creative economy? Is this creative industry? What does it encompass, please? If you can just do a recap for it. I mean, I know you're very familiar with it, but for our audience, please share, what does the creative economy encompass?
Well, let's start with the creative industries, and then we go over to the creative economy. So the creative industries is everything, including film, music, fashion, all the creative areas that they are. And in Grenada, we have pulled out some of them because you can't hit all of them. So we have pulled out like film, fashion, music. And I think we also pulled out something to do with building like whatever you call it, game building, not building, I can't remember the right name exactly. Game development. Yeah, game development. So those are kind of our focus here in Grenada. But the creative economy, what that speaks to is really allowing creatives to try to not just not just make a minimal living of their talents, but to make a substantial living of their talents. So the economy, what this government has done is pull out the creative industry as one of the pillars for development in Grenada. And this is the first time this has been done, and it's very significant. So what we are saying is that we have all the traditional things, the cocoa, the banana, the nutmeg, the tourism and all that, but we also have a unique opportunity. And this really is centered on people's development, our own people's development, our culture, our history, all those things. So we have used that area, that creative space, to really make people, allow people to make a substantial living off of that. And in doing so, the government has allocated resources towards it. So it's not just word of mouth, but allocation. So for example, the government has started the Office of Creative Affairs. That office is already established, and it seeks to register. One of the things it does, it has been doing so far, register all the creators in Grenada. Then there'll be a mapping process so we can identify exactly where the different creators are, what parishes, what areas. And the third thing was really the conference. So the conference brought together creatives and mainly people with Grenadian roots from all over the world, all over the diaspora, as well as our local creatives, to share information.
Well, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but let me just try to make a distinction, or at least help the audience to make a distinction between. We keep referring to creatives, and then we have been within our local conversation talking about cultural artists. Is there a difference between the creatives that you're referring to and the cultural artists that we are accustomed to seeing and knowing of?
No, not really. They're all part of that whole creative industry. So whether you be an artist, a musician, like I say, a jewelry maker, a fashion designer, all of those areas include the creative industries. So yeah, it includes all of those things.
Okay, and you said that we're going to go into resources most definitely, but there has been thus far the establishment of the Office of Creative Industries. Why do you think government believe that the creative industries can be a transformative pillar for Grenadian economy and society?
Well, just look around the world. If you look at the significant contribution of the creative economy around the world, the United States, Europe, etc. It contributes a great deal to a country's GDP once it's built out and once it's developed. So you're talking about something that can really transform us and give us another. It can give us another track for our economy, another area to bring in help with our economic development. Well,
let me just area. Because the examples that you cite, and Neela, feel free to jump in here. But let me just drill down on this one a little bit more. You cited the U.S. 300 million in terms of population. You cited Europe, again in the millions. We have a population, we say of 113,000. We can add to that the folks in the diaspora, and we at 200,000+ if we would like. And I will ask the question again. Why do we see the creative industries as a transformative pillar for Grenada, our small population? And what about us that you believe that this can be a transformation for the lives and people of Grenada?
With the advent of technology, we really don't have to think about the size of our population. We are really open to the world. It's a global economy, really and truly. We have access to the world. So even though we are small here in Grenada, what this allows us is to really reach the world. And the examples like Jamaica, even coming back to the region, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, and to a lesser extent St. Lucia, but mainly those top three. They have made significant strides with the development of their creative economies, and certainly we can do the same. And again, it's not limited to the size of our population.
Okay. As a member of the organizing committee, Neela, share with the audience, please, Unleashed. What was the vision behind the conference?
Well, I wasn't directly involved in the original planning of the event, but I was a part of the execution of the event. And I wanted to give an example. I wanted to add to what Mr. Gittens was saying. Now, during the pandemic, we were all shut in. We were all at home. And I as a teacher, I remember a lot of my students, they were playing games on their phones constantly. And I remember giving them the example that some Chinese students, they choose, instead of playing the games, they choose to design the games. And I encourage my students to, instead of playing the game, why don't you design the games? And that opened up a whole can of worms, a kind of opportunity for my students, because they saw that instead of just playing the game, but they're putting money into something, they can get money from it. So I think part of the vision for the creative conference was to enhance and to open up more doors and to show our creatives that there is so much more than just doing this in your hometown, doing it in your backyards, but to just to open up their eyes to the endless amount of opportunity they can have. Just by being creative and putting in the work so that they can see benefits and reap the benefits, the economic benefits for it. And it doesn't just benefit them, but it also benefits our country.
So what I'm hearing is that is one of, and I'm going to go back to you and your students, is basically a shift in mindset. Rather than being a consumer of the games,
Definitely.
Be a creator of the games. And that really is a shift in mindset. I've heard very same thing offered in terms of clothing. People of our ethnicity, we consume a lot when it comes to fashion and design, etc. But we're slow on the creative aspect of it. And is that the thrust, you would say, of the committee and of government in looking at the creative industries as a transformative pillar? And either of you can weigh in here.
Oh, definitely. I want to add that one of the presenters, one of the things that resonated, one of the things he said was follow the money. And some of us, that is 3 words, follow the money. And then somebody else highlighted that you should not just focus on your craft, but focus on your brand. And an example that has been floating around was Rihanna. If you think about Rihanna didn't just Rihanna is a brand now, so just that shift in mindset can do so much. And I think just that congregation of creatives last week created I could tell you, Colin, there are some people who went home and created songs, created poems, wrote scripts because they were so inspired by just those little things that were said during the conference last week.
Okay, Eugene, as co-chair, and you mentioned, so you will certainly share your point, but I'd want you to share with our audience what are some of the goals the committee set for itself in hosting this conference. And as you highlight the goals, certainly you would let us know which ones were accomplished and which ones are work in progress.
Good night, all.
Orlando has joined us, huh?
Okay, it seems as though your co-chair has joined us, Orlando Romain. Orlando, certainly welcome.
My chair has joined us.
All right, so certainly welcome. So as soon as you put on your camera, Orlando, I will certainly invite you and probably take Eugene off of the hot seat with this one in responding to what were
I'm not in a position to put on the camera. I hope that's not a problem. I had a bit of difficulties tonight in joining on. So I hope I can still chime in with my voice, and they could put up a picture of me on the phone, on the screen.
All right, but so while we work on that aspect, please share what were the goals of the committee, which was I was just I'm going to punt over to you. This was what I was given to Eugene. What were some of the goals the committee has set for itself in hosting Unleashed last week?
Well, one of the main goals was to really establish the concept or the narrative that the creative economy is and can be a solid pillar for economic and social transformation in Grenada. It was a concept that a lot of persons didn't understand. And so we needed to really bring everybody in the room and televise that presentation so that there can be solid understanding and buy-in to the concept of the creative economy as a main pillar of social and economic transformation. I think we really did that. Beyond the creatives who were at the conference, we got calls internationally, regionally, from locals, from farmers, from persons of all walks in life, saying that I now understand what you guys are trying to do. This is a breath of fresh air. We agree with this. We want to support this. Let me know how I can get involved. We have different businesses calling saying, who are not in the creative industry, saying how can they provide services for creatives? What can they do? So I think we achieved that core goal of really positioning the creative economy or the creative industry as something that the country, the government should focus on and will focus on.
All right.
The other
Eugene,
thing was to ensure that.
No, finish the thought, Orlando. Go ahead.
Yeah, I say the other goal was to ensure that the various stakeholders, the bankers, the lawyers, the policymakers, the educators, and the creatives themselves understand their role in developing this sector going forward. It's not a responsibility of the government only. All these key stakeholders who make up the ecosystem that is the creative economy have a very important role to play, and we wanted to underscore that role in the conference, and I think that was certainly achieved.
Okay. Eugene, as a writer and producer, what stands out in your mind from last week's conference?
You mean music-wise, right? So we had workshops on the last day of the conference where the actual practitioners, so we had a music workshop and all the different areas. And some of the things that came out of that music workshop was things like the need for an umbrella organization that would represent artists and musicians and producers. Some of the other islands, actually Dominica and St. Lucia, and I think even St. Vincent, have what's called an association of artists, musicians, and producers. And so we are certainly looking, that came out of the conference, that we should probably have something like that. And also that this organization would also help to set standards and also set ranges of prices and that kind of thing. So for example, if you want to make an ad for a TV show, you go to somebody and somebody will tell you one price, you go to somebody to tell you another price. Or if you want to go to the studio to use a studio, we need to set like a range, a standard where people who are buying the service kind of know at the get-go, at the offset, what it would cost them. Of course, you would have people who would gain more. If you're really good, obviously people will want to pay you more. But there must be some kind of baseline so that everybody who engages the industry has some kind of baseline upon entering.
Mm-hmm. So that's the standout. Why do you think that this movement towards an association of artists, of producers, has not occurred? And you said, Dominica, St. Lucia, probably St. Vincent, there is this type of association. What do you believe caused Grenada not to have this type of association prior to this? And only now having the discussion, it's not yet existing.
That's a good question. That's $1 million question. But what I would say is that coming out of this conference, it's going to happen now because people actually have been bought in, have actually bought into it coming out of the conference. So I'm sure that it would happen now.
If I may chime in here, Colin. So one of the things coming out of the conference was certainly the need for better sectorial organization. And to answer your question, I think it hasn't happened because there hasn't been the level of support from the government to make it happen. I think we need to do some hand-holding with the individual sectorial persons, and that is something that the government is committed to do over the next couple of weeks/months. We want to establish associations/cooperatives for all of those major subsectors so that they, within themselves, can have the capacity to start organizing their own activities, and so that the government can have a very solid representation and point of contact when we actually roll out other programs. So that would be something that we will commit to do via providing technical assistance in drafting up the legal requirements and helping the actual sectorial persons structure their cooperatives, their organizations for success, and even finding resources to help them jumpstart that from a financial standpoint. So to answer your question, it has been because there has been no level of guidance, strategic direction, and support for the creatives.
Okay, point taken. Neela, as a practitioner, formerly trained in the theater arts, you're a teacher or actor and all of the like, what do you look forward to most in this thrust of developing the creative economy?
That's a very good question, Colin. I think what I look forward most is for collaboration, more collaboration across the board. And as a theater practitioner, I know that I cannot put on a theater production without collaborating with everyone within my field, and even sometimes just thinking outside of the box. These days, most things are digital. And during the pandemic, I saw a lot of plays online. Yes, you do it on stage, but we couldn't have an audience. So a lot of that had to be packaged in such a way that you can bring it in a digital form. And coming out of the conference, I met so many amazing artists. There are the people I didn't know who was interested in acting and singing and dancing. And these are the things I want to see more of. I want to see more collaboration. I want to see people coming out, and not just the usual few. People who do not even know they have talent. They were represented at that conference. And I met a brilliant artist, and she could be a great set designer. And you know, people in the film industry, people, videographers, I could collaborate with them to put on, to package my work into a digital format so that it can reach a wider audience. So I think one of the main things I want to see happening is more collaboration across the board.
Okay. Orlando, let me get back to you. And have you heard any responses or feedback from the actual artisans? What was that response like in dealing with the artisans? Who are the individuals you are trying to assist, really, with the development of the creative economy?
Right, so we've had a lot of feedback from a lot of different artisans, from a lot of walks in life, senior persons, younger persons. For example, this senior person, Miss Gloria Payne Banfield, walked up to me and said she's been dreaming about this happening for a long while, and she feels like it's finally happening. She's excited, she's elated, and she's very optimistic and hopeful of the future. I've had young creatives saying that, you know, they felt unheard and unseen for a while, and
I think he dropped out.
Okay, it seems as though we lost Orlando there.
And this seems like a breath of fresh air. There's generally been a sense of enthusiasm emanating from the crew. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Orlando.
Hello? Yes, so I was saying that there seems to be, based on my interactions with person, a high sense of hope and confidence in the government as you roll out these activities. As I was mentioning, Ms. Gloria Payne Banfield, who is a stalwart in the sector, approached me and said for a long time she felt that this thing should have happened and was dreaming about something like this happening. And she feels confident that we understand the mission and is well on our way to execute it. So I think in general, they are confident, they are very hopeful, optimistic, and they want to see how they can get directly involved. There are some common themes reoccurring. One, organization in the subsectors, which I articulated earlier. They want a lot of training. I think capacity building is one of the key things. Even above financing, I think they're more concerned about technical know-how and a general sense of how do I get to this point? And that's something we certainly will spend a lot of time focusing on. How do we build the capacity of the creatives to ensure that they are ready for the regional and international market? But yeah, very positive feedback and response from them.
So let me ask you this then. Would you say that your mission for year one has been accomplished?
Not as yet, by no stretch of an imagination. I think it will be accomplished when we establish that 5 to 10 year strategy. But I think part of that mission has been accomplished, which is really setting the stage and the narrative for the creative economy and outlining our 1-year roadmap. I think that has been established. But in terms of the bigger agenda, which is that national cultural and creative policy and 5 to 10 year strategy / roadmap, we're going to be embarking on those activities shortly. And I think at the end of that...
And this rolls into my next question. What can we expect over the next year by way of implementing the creative economy agenda?
Right. So, one, we have to beef up the resources at the Office of Creative Affairs. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we'll put out a press release announcing the appointment of a new operations manager who would lead the operational functions of the office, ensuring that all these brilliant strategies and things that we're developing gets implemented in a timely and efficient manner. So that's one thing, staffing up the Office of Creative Affairs. Secondly, we're going immediately into a research project that will seek to map the current activities of the creative economy, what's its contribution to GDP, how much persons are employed, and all those baseline statistics and data. We'll then use that to build out our 1-year creative policy, cultural and creative policy, and 5 to 10 year strategy. So the strategy really is the culmination of this year's work of activities, which will then inform all the activities for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just do this. Let's take a break and then we'll come back, because I certainly would want to drill down a little bit in terms of timelines and expectations for the creation of said policy and then the rollout. So viewers, we'll be right back. We're chatting the creative economy.
WeatherGuard Pro. For every project, there's only one Pro.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, easy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
After 3 years, get ready for the return of Grenada's most anticipated event, the Hubbards Legends in Concert, Saturday, July 8th, Grenada Trade Center, 7:30 p.m. as the best of Trinidad and Tobago. Come against the best of Grenada in the biggest calypso clash of all times. Saturday, July 8th, Grenada Trade Center, 7:30 p.m. Stay tuned to this station for more info.
You know, one day I woke up and, you know, they painted a set of pedestrian crossing all along the streets. You know, nobody told us how to use that thing properly.
I know how.
You're serious?
Every safe, good driver knows about these things. As a driver, you have to be very attentive. You know you're coming up close to a pedestrian cross, you start slowing down immediately.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're talking the creative economy. We have Orlando Romain, chair of the Unleash, which was a conference held last week on the creative economy, co-chair Eugene Gittens, and the member of committee and hostess Neela Etienne. All right. Before we took the break, Orlando, we were chatting a little bit about the policy document and the strategic plan. Give us a time frame, please, when you believe that this would be developed.
Our hope is to have that completed by the end of the year, at least within the first part of the first quarter. We are well on our way to doing that. We'll actually have the terms of reference and so on for the consultancy drafted up. We also have security fundings to embark on that particular activities. So I would say certainly between by the end of this year, early next year, first quarter of next year, we should definitely have that strategy finalized. And I'm talking about the final approved, reviewed document.
Let me also ask whether you'd have to wait on that document before you decide on any initial targets for growth, because you can't be all things to all men. So as we think of the creative economy in Grenada, we have to make decisions as to where that initial investment will go. Do we have to wait on the policy document, or is there an opportunity to make some investments during the course of this year and low-hanging fruits have been identified?
Absolutely, Colin. We've already started on that. As you would know, we have implemented a suite of fiscal incentives designed for the creative economy, and that goes across the board, which is the concessions, 100% CE, 100% off CET and VAT. So that is a low-hanging fruit that we already implemented. We have already identified some of the key priority sectors, the ones that already have that level of mature organic activity. The film sector is one of them, the music industry is one of them, festivals and entertainment is one of them, visual arts is one of them, and we also want to jumpstart some activity in video game development, because we see that as an emerging sector with huge potentials for employment prospects. So there will be a lot of activities happening between in parallel to the development of the strategy, such as capacity building. We're also going to be launching a business development fund that's going to happen in parallel to the strategy being developed, because we already know the direct correlation with that and other economic activities. So we don't have to necessarily wait on the strategy for that. So yes, there's a lot of activities that will happen in parallel with this strategic development.
Work with me a little bit in terms of sharing. Who can access these concessions? VAT and GCT. That now you're saying 100%. Tell me the artisans, the business places, the individuals who can access this. Who qualifies at this point?
So these are provided for all registered creative practitioners, as in that you have registered with the Office of Creative Affairs. We have a website and a platform where you can go and submit your information. We approve it, and then you can apply for concessions. And the concession is for all persons under the creative industry. So that's filmmakers, fashion designers, photographers. There's a full list on our website that outlines who those persons are. And it is for what we consider tools of trade. So the concession is used to import materials that you would use to produce goods and services, or to upskill your particular operations. Right now, we're focusing solely on the practitioners themselves and or creative organizations such as school choirs and so forth. But we also intend to make the concessions applicable to retailers of creative goods. So, for example, an art supply shop, we're still working on the model in terms of how that would work, but they can apply for the concessions and then pass that on to the practitioners here on the ground. That one has not been fully launched as yet, but essentially would be for practitioners organizations and for retailers of creative.
All right, so you said that registered artisans can benefit, but they need to register with the Office of Creative Affairs. What is the website that can be accessed in order for me to register as a creative? Well, assuming I was a creative, that is.
I think you are creative. I see you in Juve every year. The website is www.creativeaffairs.gd. So that's www.creativeaffairs.gd.
And what you're saying to us is that a photographer who is registered can apply for 100% concessions on his camera equipment, his tripods, etc.
Absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. So I think we get an idea now as to who are the initial beneficiaries. You're also saying that there is a model that is being worked on when commercial department or commercial outlet X can import said cameras because they have access and probably more resources. They can bring in said cameras, benefiting from that 100% and pass on that convenience to artisans.
Absolutely. So that is something we're trying to work out how that would work. But it's something that's done in the marine sector. It's something that's done in other sectors, and I think we're going to just replicate those modules and implement that.
Okay, beautiful. Eugene, you're the one that produces music. So whenever I go to music, I'll go to Eugene deliberately because he normally sends me his creative songs, etc. And good pieces, and they're published, and we see them on the airwaves all the time. So what are your expectations, Eugene, for the music industry over the next year? You did mention the coming together of artisans and forming that association. That's one. But what other expectations do you have for the music industry given this thrust? You seem muted, Eugene.
Yes, so basically we have to approach the music industry as a business. And so it's not a matter of just, playing for fun. You got to be able to make a living and a substantial living off of it. So what we envision to do is to strengthen things like copyright, strengthen things like streaming and those kinds of services to make sure that our artists can get the revenue that they can get the revenue that's due to them. And so one of the things we have to look into also is, I don't know if you know of ECHO. ECHO is like the OECS collections rights organization. That is not working right currently. That's where, it's where musicians, they collect money from musicians and then pay the musicians the money that's collected for airplays and that kind of thing. So what we need to look at there is either trying to strengthen that organization, maybe putting somebody on the board or something like that, getting a Grenadian on the board who is efficient, or looking at some other models, maybe joining with COSCAP in Barbados or joining with COT in Trinidad, or trying to find some other effective way of making sure that our royalties are collected.
But Eugene, allow me to interrupt you here a little bit, because I do know a little bit of ECHO, and my next follow-up question for you would have been about copyright and intellectual property. In the olden days, a decade or so ago, my involvement in Carnival, I did have strong interest in this. And I'm going to ask you, is it that the organization is not working, or is it that artists themselves are not registered? You can't benefit if you have not registered. Artists are not registered with ECHO. Artists are not registered with COT in Trinidad, meaning very few are actually registered. And therefore, you cannot gain the benefits of being a member of an association if you are not registered in said association. So even, for example, where in Trinidad and Tobago, where there might be a developed system, if your song plays on radio in Trinidad and Tobago, even if COT collects the money, can't pass it on to you because you're not a member. Let me repeat the question. In terms of your expectations over the next year, and we're speaking now intellectual property and copyright, what are some of the things that you would like to see and certainly would be agitating for as part of the development of this creative industry?
It's a combination of what you said, but it goes back to sort of what Orlando said earlier on, that ecosystem. We have to show all of the people in that ecosystem how they can benefit. So, for example, Grenada collects very little royalties for music. I mean, people use music all over the place, hotels, radio stations, restaurants, etc., etc., etc. But nobody pays for it. So that means artists cannot get paid. So we need to look, and that's part of our objective. Is
but what I'm trying to do here, Eugene, and allow me to interrupt you, please. What I'm trying to do here is artists must first take themselves seriously by registering. I can't take you if you don't value your product by registering and saying this is mine and I respect it enough so that it is registered and I expect to be paid for its use. Then you don't expect the hotels, the radio stations, various media outlets, whether it's a jingle for an ad, etc., to be paying. And the reciprocity that goes with that, not across the region, not just in Grenada, but across the region.
Actually, Colin, quite a few of our artists are registered with ECHO. Interestingly enough, maybe back in the time, your time, but no, quite a few of our artists are registered, and that's why they're frustrated. They're frustrated because they don't get any real revenue from.
I can challenge you on the percentage when you say quite, because I emphasize a few. When you say quite a few, I underline few in that statement. But Neela wanted to weigh in, and go ahead, Neela.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in as well. The last time there was an ECHO meeting here, it was held at Labukan in Lagoon Road. And I recall the statistics of how many radio stations were registered with ECHO. And I believe it was just the one radio station, Boss FM, that was registered. I'm not sure if that has changed. And this is probably 2019, just before COVID. I recall just one radio station being registered with ECHO. So if you think about it, the artists whose music is being played on all the other radio stations, they can't collect from getting airplay from those radio stations as well.
And Green, but the way that you say stop it is by being registered and being part of the movement, because the artists at this point is outside of the conversation themselves. So in order to agitate, you must be part of the movement. And yes, the formation of the association, a collective bargaining unit, as it were, is what I'm hearing, and then forcing everyone, but first of all, impacting the mindset to recognize and respect the artists and artisans in Grenada. And that will come from starting with the artisans, but also it has to flow, and you're absolutely right, the media outlets, the hotels, and the other creatives who are creating an ad for a local entity using the music of a fellow Grenadian, but not crediting or paying that musician, although they're collecting for the same ad. So that mutual respect and that ecosystem is important, that respect goes around all through the ecosystem. Go ahead.
And also Colin, I think what it is really and truly is that people have to see all those different entities, that entire ecosystem has to see how all of this actually benefits them. It benefits them, it benefits the country, and it benefits our development. So everybody has a role to play in this. But Colin, what I'd like to do also is recognize the people, if you allow me to recognize some of the people who have been involved in Unleash.
Well, no, let's do that. You'll recognize them at the end of the program, right? But let's get into this, because I think it's important for the audience to understand and work with, because buying is for a population thing. When you start asking me to shove my hand in my pocket, I must know why I am shoving my hand in my pocket to pay for music, right? Or to pay for the other things. Why should I value this? So let's just go on. And Neela, I want to just get you here. Now, what are your expectations for the theater industry over the next year?
Well, I already stressed on more collaboration, and you said something that triggered something in my brain, and I was thinking the onus is on us now to really create work that is memorable, and sometimes we think that we're So I'm going to use me as an example. Not all the times I want to share my work that I create because I always think, oh, it's not good enough, it's not ready yet. But I want to stress that sometimes we need to put ourselves there, and we don't put ourselves there out. We don't put ourselves out enough. And a lot of my creative friends, they say that they're horrible at marketing themselves, horrible at social media, horrible at pushing their own work. They would push somebody else's work before they put their work out there. And I want to challenge us, and I'm in the mix, just to push ourselves to the limit, because we never know who we end up in a room with. And just going back to last week we were in the room with playwrights, producers, dancers. We were in the room with people like Fee Noel. And when Fee Noel sees you dressed in an outfit that you created, you never know who you will encounter. So one of my expectations for our theater practitioners is to put work out there, create, and don't be afraid to share your work with others. And I know coming out of that conference, we will get more people coming on board, because people are now seeing that we're worth something and we're valuing our work. And I want to reference something somebody said to me, one of the participants. She said that the great and good believes in the creatives. And what she meant by that is that the great and the good, people who have influence were in the same room with us, the little people. And that was profound to me, because it showed that people are looking on to see how much more we can offer the world, not just Grenada.
Let me ask you this. What are some of the things you believe should be implemented immediately to develop and harness the potential resources in film and theater industry?
Capacity building, for sure. I keep stressing that sometimes I teach at the secondary school level mostly, and when we teach theater arts in the secondary school, the students move on to TAMCC and there's nothing there for them. So there's nothing, So you see how much that impacts.
Well, let me, I believe you're reading my mind, and we're so much in sync, because I was in the BVI last week and I met with the president of the H. Liberty Stout Community College, Dr. Richard Georges, who is himself a doctoral holder, PhD in the performing arts. So this is his background. And there are 30 plus passes each year, CSEC, within the creative industries. And naturally, as the president of the college, he put on a program in the creative arts. And there were 0 registrants in that. And what he discovered is parents and students alike didn't see this as a way forward or future. So it was good enough to do at the CSEC level because they want to do 15, 16 subjects. But when it comes to the community college, parents and students were saying, I'm thinking about my future. And of course, the creatives were not viewed as said future. How do we change that mindset of our students, whether we're talking at the secondary level, but of our population, to recognize that this is an industry worth investing into through education?
You see, we need to stress, there's no continuity. That's what it boils down to. And right now, I can tell you, Grenada has 5 theater arts teachers within the secondary schools. And these 5 teachers, 2 serve in Grenville, and actually 6. 2 serve in Grenville and 4 serve in St. George. That's it.
Right.
Yeah? So you see what we're talking. Yeah.
But do you believe, and Orlando, let me just bring you in here quickly. Do you believe that starting off with Unleash and building upon this, the mindset, and having that culture is a cultural shift, really, where one can embrace the creative industries, all that it encompass, so that people can find themselves in the various streams of it and have a good living and a respected living?
Yeah, Colin, I love this conversation because it's exactly where we want to focus on capacity building. And when you speak of capacity building, I think one of the things we don't do, and it's not just the creative industry, I think it's in all education areas, we do not show the full story of the educational journey. So we're studying math in school, but how do we link math to other things, to a career? All right. You may start teaching someone music in school, but what's the end goal? What's the path? Can they see a path? Are we showing them a path to a career, a path to revenue generation, a path to a sustainable lifestyle from those particular activities. And I think that is the missing gap in showing that we build the level of awareness and the depth of awareness that's necessary so that persons can see what is possible with the subject and not just teaching the subject.
Let me ask you this, because
additionally, I think and taking an interdisciplinary approach towards capacity building is key. Now, the other gentleman at the conference, Lion Rahel Cape, he is a poet and an architect, and he uses poetry to inform the designs of some of the world's most renowned architectural pieces. So companies from all over the world fly him into their companies to write poetry that their team will use to develop architecture. So he was mentioning one where he did a poetry on ballet because they wanted to understand how the ballet dancer moves in terms of their body to then use that as inspiration to design the ergonomics and the flow of their rooms and their spaces because of how the human body works and moves through spaces. So if we start looking at creativity, not just from a one-dimension standpoint, but how it relates to other areas, for example, a graphics designer, he can be elevated into the designer of cars, all right, using 3D modeling and so forth. So there's much more than just the actual raw output, and that's something I think Grenada has done. Our tourism is the raw export. Our agriculture is the raw export, and we're not going to make the mistake and just focus on the raw export for our creative talent.
Let me ask you this, Orlando. As we on to education, and again, this is one of my biases, but we heard Neela mention that we're looking at 6 teachers island-wide, and they even concentrated 4 in St. George and 2 in St. Andrew. But as you planned on Leach, was there involvement and buy-in, not only from those 6, but also the curriculum officer in the theatre arts within the Ministry of Education, in order to ensure that as the ground up, as we influence change, as we influence young minds, that this mindset, this cultural shift can actually occur? So was the Ministry of Education intimately involved in the planning and execution of Unleash? Were the curriculum officers, for example, music, theatre, arts, etc., along with the teachers, intimately involved?
So they weren't involved in the planning and execution of the event, but they were involved in the conference. As a matter of fact, the minister was there, the permanent secretary of education was there. And we had some very specific presentations by Dr. Didicus Jules, who is an educator and quite renowned in that space, about the importance of education and how we approach education. So I think the right people were in the room. They weren't necessarily part of the planning team, which is more logistics and so forth, but they were definitely part of the conversation in terms of their role. And as I mentioned, the key thing was to bring these stakeholders together, the key stakeholders, for them to understand their role in this whole developmental process. And I think the minister who promised to come there for 2 hours stayed about 3 to 4 hours because he was so engrossed in the content.
Let us talk rubber hits the road now. How do we promote Colin, the creative industries as a viable career?
Can you repeat that?
How do we promote? So I'm going to how to, right? As we think of it, we know it's important. We know we have to do it. That's a fact. But how do we do it? From where you sit now and your understanding of the creative industries and the mindset of our population, how do we promote areas of the creative industry as viable career pathways for youngsters?
We can do that in multiple ways. It requires, of course, sitting with the ministry and the curriculum designers to ensure that we develop the right programs for students from our primary school level go right up to tertiary education. It also requires us to go on a national awareness campaign to ensure that in every sphere of Grenada, we promote the creative arts as a viable option. It also requires us to launch and host activities where the persons who are in creative careers can profile their successes, such as creative job fairs or creative expos that people can see, interact and dialogue with persons who are successful. It really requires us to step into our diaspora resources, to bring them back here every now and again for career days, focusing on the creative industry. So really taking a multi-pronged approach towards implementing that capacity building initiative.
Let me stick with you here. Is this the role envisioned for your project officer? I know the announcement is coming tomorrow.
Absolutely.
But is this one of the roles?
Tomorrow is the operations manager, but we will have project officers within the ministry. As a matter of fact, Neela, who's on the call here, and the educator, I don't want to jump the ball, but will be coming across to the Office of Creative Affairs also.
Well, I mean, so much for said secondary school that had the talents of Neela Etienne, apparently. But I would leave that alone for another conversation. But share with us, Orlando. I'm going to keep you on the hot seat here. Go ahead, Neela.
Sorry, I wanted to add that because I've been in the classroom for so long, I have heard the cries of my students, right? And a lot of my students always say, Mommy don't want me to do this. Mommy don't want me to do that. What are you doing that for? And funny enough, I had that when I was growing up. And I remember mentioning I mentioned in the conference that the arts made me in so many ways. It helped me with my confidence. It helped me with my math, with my English, everything which I needed for school and which I needed to function in my society. So I feel it for the students who really want to make music a career, and they want to make the visual arts work a career, but they're shut in and they're shut down by parents. They're shut down by even some teachers shut that down. So it's something that makes my heart bleed sometimes, and I cry out for these students. So I think we all need to play our part in society to encourage our students to follow their dreams in whatever dreams they may have.
Okay. Orlando, let me get back to you a little bit and share with us, please, what specific investment will government be making to ensure that this creative economy is a pillar that can stand? I mean, I'm looking over the next year now, some of the concrete things that you will be doing as government to ensure that this pillar stands. And hence, in year 2, as we move into 2024, we can look back on accomplishments that you're going to be announcing today and building upon those as we move forward 3 to 5 years that you were speaking about earlier.
I think the first would be the completion and implementation of that national cultural creative industry policy, strategy, and the relevant legislations to support it. So that is probably the foundation for the years to come. It will clearly outline how we are going to develop each of the subsectors, the key targets for each of the subsectors, and the resources needed to develop those sectors. The other thing is capacity building. And we certainly plan to do that on a three-tier, taking a three-tier approach. Firstly is the creatives themselves, building their technical competencies, but also building the capacity of the business support personnel who the creatives will depend on. So whether you're a musician and you need a business manager, or you need a lawyer that's focused on IP, building capacity there.
I know. Let me allow me to interrupt you again. Once we talk building capacity, we talk in education. You know that I will jump in on this one. All right. Are we saying that there are going to be scholarships and on the government's priority listing in the 2023-2024 academic year, scholarships, whether it's to certificate programs, baccalaureate programs, or beyond, for creatives?
So we will have different types of scholarships, but as I was mentioning, we're going to have scholarships for the creatives themselves. If I'm a filmmaker, there's scholarships for me. That could either be certificates, or certs, that could either be degrees, or that can either be online courses. Now, the creative industry is quite dynamic and doesn't require you to be in a classroom for a bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. A lot of persons are opting for online courses or short bootcamp certificates. So there will be training and scholarships for the creatives themselves. As a matter of fact, in the conference, we announced the provision of 500 scholarships on Coursera, right? So that's the creatives themselves. But we know that the creatives themselves will require an external ecosystem of business support specialists. So whether it's legal from an IP standpoint, whether it's business management, from a management standpoint, we want to provide scholarships to persons who want to go and study things like music and business, or entertainment management. So those are the second level scholarships. And the third level scholarships is for persons who want to focus on policy and strategy from a national level to ensure that we do have persons within the ministries who understand how to develop these sectors and nurture the sector. So it's a three-layer approach towards our scholarships. and it will be both degrees and also certifications. So as I mentioned, education is a pillar that will definitely ensure that this thing takes lift. And the third thing is ensuring that we strike the right relationships and or agreements with international organizations, other countries, via whether it is film treaties or whatever, and ensure that we profile the destination as a creative hub ready to do business with the international community.
Thank you very much for that, Orlando. It's time for us to take our next break and we'll be back speaking those types of relationships. Viewers, we'll be back soon.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
For when you need someone to help you to your feet, I'll be that beacon to your highest peak. Oh, I'll be right next to you, no, I will never leave. Come on, take my hands, we got everything we need. Cause you can look to me, yes, I can. Whenever you're in need, yes, you can. Just call on me and I'll be on my way. I'll be by your side, never to divide, the light that shines our way. Wherever you run me, we'll make your dreams come true. Next time, next time, next time, next to you.
Nexa Credit Union, with you wherever your road leads.
Here is a little known fact. There is only one place in Grenada that you can get an MRI scan done. That place is Spicile Imaging Center. Yes, Grenada, that's the truth. Other centers could offer you other scans, but Spicile Imaging provides an authentic MRI scan. We operate at Grenville and the Carnage. We provide the widest range of laboratory tests and services. CT scans, x-rays, mammograms, ultrasounds, and a host of other services. We are fully staffed by a team of family doctors and specialists. Call us today at 444-7679 or 440-1500 or visit any of our locations. Spicile Imaging, from seeing the doctor to getting lab tests, scans, and pharmacy services. We are here to take care of you.
Welcome back, viewers. We're talking the creative economy and the aspects of the creative industries. When we left off, Orlando Romain, who was chair of Unleash, was speaking of establishing access, really, for training and capacity building within the creative industries. And Orlando, let me just bring you back here. Noted in this area, Trinidad and Tobago, we cited them in terms of capacity and training. Jamaica is another example. I can cite institutions, University of Trinidad and Tobago, Edda Madley College in Jamaica. Is there any outreach to those countries, institutions, or other examples that you can give as you look towards this capacity building trust in year one of this movement towards developing our creative economy?
Absolutely, yes. Those will be staple institutions that we will reach out to. Additionally, we also have our eyes set on the continent, because I think that's Africa. They are experiencing exponential growth in their creative sector, and I think There's a lot of lessons we can learn from what they're doing, and also engage in a lot of exchange between the African continent and the Caribbean and Grenada, definitely. We see Africa as a ready market for creative goods and services, simply because there's a lot of cultural similarities, and so the communicating on a creative level will be much more enhanced with Africa. We also want to focus a lot on our diaspora. We have a significant amount of persons who have made successful careers in the creative space within the diaspora. The conference really highlighted some of them, but there's a lot more, and we certainly want to tap into them for capacity building. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have a website, and on that website, we have a creative registry. Now, the registry is literally a database of all the creatives who exist in Grenada, and more can register as they go along. But we do plan to extend the services of that registry to include a business networking platform. Essentially, that allows our creatives to reach out to persons who will be part of our mentorship program. So we're trying to find all the creatives throughout the diaspora, all the Grenadian creatives, and also persons who aren't Grenadian but are friends of Grenada. And they will provide their time to mentor our budding creatives. So someone can book a 15 minutes discussion or interview with one of those seasoned creatives to discuss more practical things and practical approaches towards their creativity. We've had multiple persons ask us all types of questions about engaging in business transaction. How do I value my artwork? I have somebody who wants to buy a painting. Should I sell the work? How do I assess the value of the intellectual property? Should I sell them a license, or should I sell a painting wholesale? So those type of practical information will be supplied and through the business and networking platform, but the more formal training and so on, certainly through exchanges with Africa or other countries, utilizing our stable institutions such as UE, and also using online platforms such as Coursera and Domestica, which is a platform focused on training for the creative industries.
Okay, thank you very much. Callers, you certainly can weigh in. 440-1252, that's the number. If you can call in with any questions for our panelists. Of course, we have Orlando Romain, who is chair of Unleash, Eugene Gittens, co-chair, and hostess Neela Etienne. Eugene, Spice Mass was launched very recently, and they had the Grenada launch, we had the New York launch. Tell us, how does Grenada's Carnival fit into this thrust of the development of the creative industries? You're still on mute.
It's all a part of it. Carnival, culture, artists, it's all a very big part of it. It's interesting because, unfortunately, some of our artists who would have liked to be at the conference were away, were in New York at the time. So some were not able to be at the conference. But certainly, we made the linkages with Spice Mars Cooperation. And so we'll be working closely with them as we develop the creative sector.
And what about the Grenada Cultural Foundation? What's the role and vision for them in participation in this activity?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the head of the Grenada Cultural Foundation, Chris Dewicks, he was part of the organizing committee. So yeah, they also have a role in this.
And let me just go a challenge here. How do we broaden, and I think this is one of the challenges that we have, how do we broaden the conversation of Grenada's culture and creatives beyond the August season? So the artisans who put on that spectacle called Spice Mass Carnival Monday and Tuesday quite often don't see themselves leveraging those talents for the rest of the year. Whether we're talking the songwriters, the musicians, etc. We seem to create a song for Soca Monarch Night or for the Mardi Gras night or the Thursday night whenever the Calypso competition is held. But we don't see ourselves creating music throughout the year which will harness our skills. You'll get a chance to respond to that, but we do have a caller online. Good evening, caller, and welcome.
Good night, Mr. Colin. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Nice program, man. I like your line of questioning too. One thing I want to find out from you. decentralization of the whole capacity building thing. Could we see more about that instead of having to St. George's area or we up knowing countryside? For the development of the industrial parks with some of these programs and then that we're developing. Thanks for the program, man. Very good program.
Excellent. Orlando probably can respond to this because I'm assuming that when these scholarships will be announced, it will be announced and anyone from anywhere. But the caller was zoning in, recognizing the limitations and geographic limitations of the current teachers. Would we attempt to deliberately decentralize the training and the capacity building so that all of Grenada can benefit?
The answer to that is yes. I think one of our big focuses will be on the rural part of Grenada. We do have a more larger plan to try to urbanize Grenada, moving the divide between the urban and the rural. But from an implementation standpoint, we will certainly be focusing on a lot of the rural aspects of Grenada in terms of making sure that the persons there receive those scholarships, they know about those scholarships, and also apply and are successful in those scholarships.
Okay. 440-1252, that's the number. Go ahead, Neela, and maybe you also will want to weigh in.
Right. I was just going to add to what Orlando was saying. I know the government also has planned. I know the different, on a parish level, the community centers would be crucial to housing some of those workshops and other activities, other cultural activities that we're having, because I know a big challenge is housing a lot of those activities. I know the Look Cinema, I passed the other day and I saw some construction happening. So if that could be done, I think it would be a lot easier to have different centers for other cultural activities so that everything does not happen.
Neela, I'm smiling here because one of my next questions for Orlando, he spoke about a lot of things, but he never spoke of a physical space by way of that investment. There have been lots of talk about the Simon Cultural Center, but as an actress, so Neela wouldn't ask it, but I will ask it. They have Labukan that could seat 25 people. I know that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the artisans, the actors need a space. The musicians need a concert hall where the acoustics are complementary to their talents. What type of investment do you envision on the way to facilitate that as we build the creative industries?
So that is something that has been long in the making, but a lot of things over the years have been long in the making, and it took a NDC-led administration to knock out quite a few of them in the first couple of months. So like pension, this one will come to fruition also. The funding has already been allocated for that project, which is the development of a state-of-the-art Center for Excellence / Performing Arts Theatre. The exact specifics I can't give right now in terms of whether it's going to still be at Simon's relocated, when it's actually going to start construction, but it's something that is high on the agenda for implementation. And I can safely see our government is one that seems to be getting the implementation right and quite fast also. But you asked a question before, Colin, in terms of the seasonality of the practitioners, particularly the musicians. Mm-hmm. That is a very good question, and it's something that is a concern to us and is something that we're looking into. One of the ways we can solve this is by ensuring that we have additional national events throughout the year, and we are in the exploration phase of establishing a national music festival. I know there has been attempts before, but we're looking to do that again, and this time we're focusing on the Afro-Caribbean theme. Dominica has their Creole festival, St. Lucia, St. Kitts has their jazz. We're looking to see how we can experiment with an Afro-Caribbean theme, becoming the mecca for that type of music throughout the region. And of course, as I mentioned before, strengthening that relationship with the continent in terms of culture and creativity.
Okay, thanks for mentioning that, and you need to jump in with both feet and jump in quickly, because St. Lucia Jazz this past weekend had an Afrobeats night. So if they're not sticking strictly to jazz, they too have their eyes on the continent. And I say this as a warning, because I remember when Grenada started the Spice Word Festival, it was one of only 4 word festivals in the region. Right now, there are 20 plus word festivals in the region, and Grenada is not necessarily consistently putting on one annually. I'm going to just leave that there. Let me just ask, and shifting a little bit, I want to get back to you on a policy question, Orlando, and addressing this whole idea of intellectual property, because I think that is key for people taking the industries seriously. That is key for people to realizing, the people being able to realize the true benefits of their talent and their work. So what are some of the things that government and your office will be doing to ensure the protection of the intellectual property of the artisans and encouraging them to then build upon that creativity?
So, as I mentioned, one, a very simple low-hanging fruits is the establishment of these cooperatives as associations, where standards and so forth will be met. 2, we'll be working very intimately with CAIPO, which is the intellectual property agency here in Grenada, to see how we can revise current legislations, improving it, and also looking to sign on to and ratify other regional treaties / agreements, legislations that will protect our creatives. There are quite a few that Grenada has been quite tardy in ratifying, and we certainly will be looking towards that. Additionally, and that will certainly be articulated in our policy and strategy. Whatever we come up with from a policy standpoint and a strategy standpoint, there will be a component of legislative development to make sure that we support that policy. We certainly will do a lot of workshops with our creatives for them to thoroughly understand how to approach intellectual property. It could be multiple things: copyrights, patents, trademarks. It's not just one size fits all. And having a thorough understanding as to how it works and how you can use it, not just to protect your work, but also to ensure you can reap the maximum revenue or revenue yield from your creative work. I had a conversation with someone just today speaking about the fact that the price, our price for photography has dropped significantly, and that we need to do something to increase the price. I'm like, well, you can increase the price, but as technology becomes more prevalent, you can naturally expect to see a reduction in price. What we have to do now is focus on intellectual property, where you don't just sell your photos one-off for $250, but you sell a license, so you get a reoccurring, you have reoccurring revenues over the years. So really moving our creatives to a more mature and sophisticated phase or aspect of revenue generation, as opposed to just sticking to the single sale. And intellectual property is a tool and asset that would allow them to mature their revenue streams.
Okay, beautiful. Share with us for me, please. There was an observation that the financial institutions in Grenada were not necessarily an integral part of the conference. You would say whether that is accurate or not, but more importantly, I think we all heard Mr. Killer say they don't respect us. How do we go about getting that respect from the financial institutions and hence the buy-in to support the creative industries?
Yeah. So to answer the first question, yes, I think we could have. We expected to see a lot more financial institutions there. We certainly had GDB, Corp Bank was there, Republic Bank was there, but we expected to see a lot more, particularly from the credit unions. I know invitations were sent out, but for one reason or the other, all didn't come. But I think we had a fair representation with those three staple organizations. To answer the second part of the question, yes, there has generally been a challenge with finance in the creative industry. And I believe it's because of the characteristics of the industry to begin with. It's not one that is easily assessed from a risk standpoint. If I write a book, or if I write a song, if I produce a film, it's quite difficult to assess the risk and the returns on investment on those things from an inception standpoint, simply because there's no proof of concept in most instances. So I don't think our financial institutions right now are set up to make investments or give loans in those types of products, particularly the more complicated ones. So it requires us to look for new funding sources and avenues. Now, our office will be focused heavily on grant funding. We'll have an officer who will be out there. Their job is to find grant funding and funding programs that we can then redistribute to our citizens here. But we'll also have to have more sustained ways of doing that. And one of the things we're toying with is a sort of a tax credit system where we work with the private sector to allow them to invest in creative businesses and creative projects and receive a sort of a tax credit in return. So it would work something like this. I'm a filmmaker. I want to produce a particular film. I do the business plan for the film. It requires a $500,000 investment. I go to the Office of Creative Affairs, pitch the project. They approve it as an approved creative project, and they assign a certain budget towards that project. That budget may be, let's say, $400,000. They say we're going to fund $400,000 in that project. I would then get a letter that I can take to various private sector businesses and pitch for an exchange. So I would allow them to use the tax credit given in exchange for cash investment in that particular project. It's a module that's used throughout the region, well, in several countries in the region and internationally. That's one option. Things like angel investing is also another source. We do plan, as I said, to tap into the diaspora. There is an assumption that there is some considerable amount of resources within the diaspora, and I think it's high time we find ways to allow the diaspora to reinvest into various sectors in Grenada's economy. The creative economy will be one of them. So those are just three initial ideas, but again, the strategy would be able to articulate.
Let me ask you this: can we see this as part of year 2 strategic goal, funding for the creatives?
It will be more defined in year 2 once we have the strategy, but we're certainly going to attempt. As I mentioned, we have established a business development fund. So that's the government's direct way of putting skin in the game. Right, and that fund will be implemented through the GDP via either grants or soft loans. So it's $1.5 million, and that will be available for creative businesses that we deem to have a product or a service that is export ready. So that's one way of dealing with it in the interim. But we have to develop more long-term solutions, and that will certainly be clarified and articulated in the 5 to 10 year strategy.
Okay. Neela, let me just bring you in here and share with us whether you believe that there should be, alongside everything that we're speaking about, whether there should be a strategy to develop an appreciation for local as part of this thrust of respect and increased consumption, or to fuel the increased consumption.
Colin, you're putting me on the spot here. Could you repeat the first part of your question, please?
Yeah, so I'm just asking whether or not, alongside all that have been spoken about, whether you believe that there should be a strategy to cultivate the taste for local alongside everything that is taking place. So, in other words, you need to build the demand because at the end of the day, the artisan has to survive. So, should we also be working on the demand side, not just the supply?
Well, it should work hand in hand, and I will stress again that I think some of we locals, and I'm gonna put myself in that too, local creators. We need to develop ourselves, develop our brand, because sometimes we think it's good, it's real good, but sometimes it's not really at that standard, that international standard. And I think we should take responsibility for that and create a proper product. And I think that's how we're gonna get the respect of even the corporate bodies. And I could tell you, when I started doing theater, I was competing. I was in the mix too. I was a young creative, I was a young director, and then I'm in the same pool as Uras Peters, Christopher D. Riggs, Ricardo Kings Douglas. Now these are people who have been established for years. So I know how to come up to a particular standard so that I could get the respect of the corporate body. So I think it works twofold.
Okay. It's 5 minutes today. Also, it's time for closing comments. Eugene, I will start with you. I know you had some thank yous. So this is an opportunity to give your thank yous as well as your closing comments. And again, you're muted.
All creativity starts with an idea, you know. So the idea for this conference came from Mr. Orlando Romain. I remember when he showed me the concept paper, I looked at it and it looked really good. And then I asked him how much time he has to deliver this. And then he told me about, I think it was 2 months. And I said, well, I didn't think it was possible. But with the team that he came up with, people like Anisha Lett, Ricardo Kings Douglas, Faye Thompson, Gail Perso, Kareed Clement, Akira Patterson, Irvin Hood, Christy Riggs, Darlene Perryman, Robert and Keisha Branch, and all the other like subsidiary people like the Olivier brothers doing their thing. And Orlando, if I forgot anybody, please jump in. But we couldn't have done this without those people, the hard work and dedication that they provided to make this all happen within a very short space of time. So I would close by saying that it was an absolute pleasure working with that group to make this conference possible.
All right. Neela, closing comments? I'll save the closing comments of the chair for the last.
Once again, Colin, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be on Beyond the Headlines talking about the creative economy. And I just want to encourage all my creative colleagues to keep pushing. Don't give up. And I remember giving a speech some years ago, and I started the speech by saying, wherever I go with my flag. And somebody said a similar thing. Wherever they go with Grenada. And I just want us to keep that in mind. Go with Grenada. Represent well, represent ourselves, our families well, and represent Grenada well. This is for Grenada. So thank you.
All righty. Orlando?
Hello?
Your closing comments, Orlando?
Yes. For me, it's quite simple. We have unleashed an idea. We have unleashed an energy. And I think the entire nation is ready for what is to come. The next step is implementation. So my focus and the office and the government's focus over the next couple of months is to ensure that we implement to really be able to deliver on the things that were mentioned in the conference.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Orlando Romain, Chair of the Unleash Conference, Co-Chair, Mr. Eugene Gittens, hostess and teacher and author and exponent of the theater arts, Ms. Neela Etienne. Thank you all so very much for joining us. And for you, our listeners and viewers, thank you so very much for being a part of this evening's edition of Beyond the Headlines. The creative economy is extremely important because it really speaks to self-love, who we are as a people, appreciating each other, our culture, and our talents. We're all blessed in different ways, and respecting the creative industries is one way of demonstrating the respect and that love for each other that we should have as Grenadians, and then we unleash it on the rest of the world. Thank you so very much for joining us. My name is Colin Dowe. I was pleasure serving as your host, and look forward to being with you 6 days, 22.5 hours from now. Good evening, and God bless.